What does 70mm IMAX 15 perf mean? Why is it special? What does 5 perf mean? What does perf mean? What is film? Hey, my name is Sheel. Let's talk about 70mm IMAX, my experience watching it, and then I'm gonna review Barbenheimer in the segment of this video. There may be spoilers for that section. The bomb works, but we'll discuss that in a few minutes. Let's go learn. Welcome back to the classroom. I had the absolute pleasure of forcing my friends to watch the 70mm 15 perf IMAX film print of Oppenheimer. There are only 30 theaters in the entire world that are able to show this 70mm film print, and only 6 in Canada, so I thought might as well. This was my first time experiencing this format. So, what is it, and is it good? Or is it just big? Let's dive deeper. The size and format comparison. When you're going to watch a movie at a theater, you have many different versions of the movie that you can watch. So, with film, you have IMAX 70mm 15 perforations, we'll get to that, 70mm 5 perf, and then 35mm film. And the digital versions have IMAX laser, IMAX xenon, and DCP. And this chart is to scale based on their resolution equivalence. So for perspective, this down here, this is digital 4K, which is amazing. 4K on a TV, that's really good. But this is IMAX 70mm 15 perf. It's big. It's very, very big. So there were 2 cameras that were used to film Oppenheimer. The IMAX 65mm camera, which, fun fact, IMAX stands for Image Maximum. You didn't know that, now you do. I didn't know that about like an hour ago. We're learning together. And also the Panavision 65 Super 70. Now you're thinking, Sheel, you've been talking about 70, what is 65? Now let me tell you, it's just a lot of numbers. So basically, what's perforations? You wanted to know what perf is. Perf are all these little dots along the edges of the film. IMAX 15 perf, 15 little perforations. 5 perf, 5 perforations for each frame. So therefore, 3 frames from a 5 perf film can fit into 1 frame of a 15 perf film. It's big. It's really big. Let's talk about the exact film used. Kodak supplied the 65mm film for both the IMAX and Panavision cameras. For color, they used Kodak 250D and 500T. And for black and white, they used XX. And this is the first of its kind. Christopher Nolan had Kodak specially make XX in 70mm for this film. So that's pretty cool. These are actually film stocks you can get right now. Companies like Cinestill and Flickfilm re-spool these Kodak films for 35mm and medium format stills cameras. I actually have some Kodak 250D that I'm pumped to try out. And after watching this movie, I definitely want to try XX. Portrait, medium format, print it, could be really nice. So what happens when you watch this movie on a non-IMAX 70mm film screen? It crops. So depending on your theater, you'll see different aspect ratios. When I mentioned earlier that only 6 theaters in Canada can show this, it is the film version. You can still watch the IMAX digital version of the movie and you would still have that large 4:3 aspect ratio, but it just wouldn't be the film print. This is actually what the film looks like behind the scenes in the projector, and it's 17 kilometers long. How crazy is that? And if you're watching it on a normal size screen with a digital projector, then the image is just cropped so that everything is equal and you don't get a mix of aspect ratios throughout the film. And we can get into a whole discussion and history about aspect ratios, but it's way too much. There's a whole history. It's really cool though, it's really interesting. My pros and cons on the format. The cons. The whole movie isn't filmed in 15 perforations. This is the camera in action. It is very loud. So the camera is only used in these amazingly big moments like landscape shots, reactions, some close-ups, and it can't really be used for dialogue scenes. So what would happen is a huge landscape sweeping shot, but then when it zooms in to the character talking, it switches to a different camera and it gets cut because they're no longer using 15 perf, they're using 5 perf so that they're able to capture the dialogue as well. It is slightly jarring because you're going from a huge shot to just it cuts in almost half. It looks like it cuts in half. And the quality definitely changes. You can see so much more grain on the 5 perf. So it was slightly jarring. And since it's film, it's not perfect. Throughout the film, there were many little specks of dust that would stay on the screen for a little bit. A lot of scratches, and it just flickers a little bit more than a digital print would. And it's just generally not a perfect image, which isn't the biggest con, but is something to note. The pros, it's gorgeous. If you've ever looked into a TLR medium format camera, that glassy 3D look that you get, that's what it looks like on the big screen. And since the Imax screen goes from like floor to ceiling, it's overwhelmingly cool. I've never seen anything like it. I think it's really, really dope. The film takes up your whole vision, and seeing so much detail and depth was actually something really special. I think like within the first couple of minutes, I actually audibly said, whoa, as I was watching it. It was really cool. It was really, really cool. Let's transition over to the segment. Hi, welcome to the segment. Me moving over here now means that we are in the segment portion of the video. That's where I tell you something cool, something fun that I watched, heard, seen, did, or been a part of since my last video. Sticking with today's talk, Barbenheimer. These are the notes I made about 10 minutes after each movie. So these were just my initial impressions and reactions to each movie. Let's start with Barbie. It was an enjoyable movie. I'm a big goose head, as they say, so I might be biased, but Ryan Gosling was the best part. Also Weird Barbie, I think Kate McKinnon was very fun. I've seen a lot of polarizing reviews, so we're not gonna talk about the politics, okay? Let's just talk about the movie. Opening scene was funny. Ha 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 ha, I said. I like the 2001 Space Odyssey parody. Margot Robbie played a great Barbie, and the narration about her was funny. It was visually great, amazing set designs, and some fun dance sequences. But it felt like it was trying too hard to be Bollywood, and it just missed the mark. It was missing something. I've seen a lot of Bollywood. Sometimes they did cartoonish stuff, then other times they didn't. I think they should have played into that more. Like when Barbie was sitting on the ground and like very stiff movements, I thought that was really, really funny, but it only happened a few short times, and little cartoonish puffs under the car and her flying down from the set. All that was great. I think they just could have leaned into that more to separate Barbie from the Barbie world and in the real world. Felt like half the time it was a fun family movie, and then the other time was more about the mature adult themes. So I felt the tone was a bit strange, personally. I wanted to leave the theater with a deeper existential crisis about everyday life, but it was just short. Definitely a movie to watch in your Mojo Dojo Castle house. Did I say castle? Mojo Dojo Casa House. Come on. Oppenheimer. It was big. It was loud. The acting was incredible. Robert Downey Jr. was extremely captivating. I don't know how Oppenheimer was as a person. I've never met him. But Cillian Murphy was him. He was him. Emily Blunt was also a standout. She did such a great job. Visually, I just talked about it. Incredible. The scenes that took up the entire screen were immaculate. I talked about the jarring transitions between one camera to the next, but I guess that's just what had to happen. It was a lot though. I didn't think it was gonna be a 3-hour courtroom drama, but it was. I had a hard time keeping track of character names, because they just kept dropping them, like Niels Bohr, Einstein. I know all those names from all my science classes, but associating and remembering who did what and whomst is talking to whomst and where is who in what timeline, it was a lot. It was just tough to keep track of at some points. I wish it had a little bit more of the scientific development and revelations, but it was more so about the courtroom drama. The sound was nuts, the score was fast and intense, but the dialogue had to compete with that. And I definitely did not hear everything that everyone said, so that also added a bit of toughness to the whomst did what's scenario. Why do you do this, Mr. Nolan? You did this with Tenet. Increase the volume of the dialogue just a bit, please. The editing was extremely fast. There was almost no time to breathe. And there's a rule of sorts when you're editing where you need to enter the scene at the last possible moment and exit the scene at the earliest possible moment. And I think this was applied to every single scene. It really gave a sense of anxiety throughout the entire movie, and every scene was a build up to the next, and it just kept building and kept building. I think personally, it could have just taken a little bit of its time at some points to allow some breathing room. Overall, a great drama, emotional, a good watch. Bye. What does 70mm Imax perf 15 perf mean? What does